because the SNP is the biggest party from Scotland at Westminster, their supporters will always say that Westminster, or the government at Westminster, has no mandate to govern Scotland. What do they mean by that? Well, a mandate means, quote, authority to carry out a policy. So to suggest that the Parliament and the government duly formed after a general election does not have a mandate to govern a part of the United Kingdom is constitutional and democratic nonsense, as I am about to explain. And it's also dangerous nonsense, because it's suggesting that the constitutionally and democratically convened Parliament and the government which is formed as a consequence is somehow illegitimate. Indeed, you'll hear that language from some of the wilder elements of the SNP, including their MSPs, including their MPs and their supporters in the media. Well, here's the truth. The British Parliament has both a constitutional and a democratic mandate. That is, it has an authority to govern for all parts of the United Kingdom. It has a mandate for unity. Parliament has a mandate for unity, a constitutional one and a democratic one. Now, constitutional means relating to an established set of principles governing a state. And the established constitutional principle here is that every single person in Scotland who voted at the general election for a person to go to Westminster and to sit in that Union Parliament was giving direct authority to that person to go there and govern for all of the United Kingdom. By voting to send someone to Westminster, whether that person is elected or not, and whether that person is for or against Westminster, by doing that, by voting for them to go to Westminster, you are explicitly giving direct authority to that entire Parliament which is eventually formed to govern on your behalf. That is the constitutional principle which holds the UK together, and it is the constitutional principle which holds all democratic states together. And if you don't want them to govern for you, then what you do is you would vote for an abstentionist, that is someone who will not actually go to the Parliament. And by doing that, you are making your opposition to it known. That's the way that you do it. And so if you voted for that person to go, you are giving them a constitutional mandate to govern on your behalf, regardless of who they are. Secondly, the Union Parliament, the British Parliament, the Westminster Parliament has a democratic mandate. It has democratic authority. Because how's that measured? It's measured this way. The majority of people who voted at the general election in 2019 did so for parties which want the UK to stay together. The majority of people who voted in Scotland in 2019 voted for parties who want to keep the UK together. Now, a majority of MPs for that principle were not elected. The SNP had the majority of MPs, but that's just the way that the first past the post system works. It didn't change, and it doesn't change the fact that a majority of people in Scotland voted for parties that want to keep the UK together. So Westminster has that democratic authority as well. So to conclude, as we said in our magazine Union Heart, our 40-page magazine, and you'll find the link to that in the comment thread. As we said, the British Parliament has an absolute moral, constitutional and democratic right, responsibility and duty to say no to a second referendum and yes to a united Britain. It is entirely proper for the British Parliament and the Prime Minister and government to stand for the integrity, stability and security of the UK. It is entirely moral, constitutionally legitimate, democratic and necessary for the British Parliament to avoid endangering the future of the UK by granting another referendum. So, ladies and gentlemen, the British Parliament and the government which it forms has a mandate, a constitutional mandate and a democratic mandate to govern on behalf of all of the United Kingdom, including Scotland. So that's Busting Indie Myths 3. And next week we'll be back with Busting Indie Myths 4. And every week this year we're going to bust another indie myth in 2 or 3 minutes, so that by the end of the year we're going to have a great back catalogue of indie myths busted, lying on the floor. So if you're a Scottish nationalist, get to higher ground, because we are going to flood you with facts.